You have been told to close your eyes and see the life you want. You have been told that vivid images will pull it toward you. You accepted that because it felt clean and optimistic. You did not notice what it was quietly doing to you. It was not charging you. It was draining you. Here is the uncomfortable part. The way you visualize is canceling the future you claim to want. Not because visualization is useless, but because the version you practice tricks the nervous system into thinking the job is already done. You think it is a signal to the universe. Your brain treats it like a reward it did not earn. The cost is subtle. The cost is drive. This is not my opinion. There is a long record of this effect. In psychology, Gabrielle Oettingen's work showed that people who indulge in positive fantasies about outcomes pay for that pleasure with lower effort, weaker follow-through, and poorer results. Not sometimes. Consistently. The pattern is simple. Fantasize about the finish line. Feel relief, then move slower. You misread that relief as alignment or confidence. It is not. It is loss of tension. The exact tension you need to move at all. Dopamine science explains the mechanism without any mysticism. Dopamine spikes when you pursue something that might pay off. It is about movement and prediction. The rush you feel from vivid success imagery is a small, unearned reward. Your system logs it. The baseline drops. The next time you think about the goal, you get less of a push. You will need more fantasy to feel the same way. You repeat the scene in higher resolution. You add music. You call it motivation. It is consumption. The habit becomes stronger than the original intention. Your brain learns that thinking about the result is easier and cheaper than earning it, so it optimizes for more of that. There is also a social feedback loop that you ignore because it flatters you. You talk about your big vision. People nod. They tell you it sounds impressive. Your status rises a little. That signal is enough to satisfy a deeper hunger for recognition, so urgency fades. You confuse being seen as someone who will do it with becoming someone who does it. The distance between those identities is where most people lose years. Stoic thinkers warned about this without the language of neuroscience. Epictetus drew a hard line around what is in your control. He kept attention on present choices and the character those choices build. Seneca wrote that desire makes us poor. He did not mean money. He meant that craving what is not in hand makes you easy to move and easy to sell to. Marcus Aurelius rehearsed difficulties in the morning, not to attract them, but to meet them with a steady face if they came. He did not sit in a trance and taste the sweetness of triumph. He armored his mind against interruption, flattery, delay, and pain. He knew that soft images make soft people. The modern performance world has another angle. Mental rehearsal works for athletes and surgeons. But look closely at what they rehearse. They do not indulge in the applause. They do not lie back and soak in a podium moment. They run the movement pattern. They account for the variables. They can feel the weight, the angle, the timing. They involve the body. That type of visualization sharpens a circuit that already exists. Outcome fantasy does not. It paints a mural over a blank wall and then congratulates itself for having built a house. You might resist this. You will say that seeing the future keeps you focused. You will point to a few people who set a vision and hit it. Then you will forget the thousands who visualized just as hard and went nowhere. Survivorship bias is not a minor error. It is how you justify a ritual that fails in quiet ways. The winners you admire did not stop at the movie in their head. They built a respect for friction. They measured the cost and paid it. Many of them refused to wear their aim on their sleeve because they guarded their attention like capital. The truth you avoid is simple. There are two paths under the same language. One path uses vision the way a compass uses north. It is directional and sparse. It is held lightly. The other path eats fantasy like sugar. It tastes good. It spikes mood. Then it leaves you dependent on the next hit. The first path creates tension. that turns into action. The second path burns that tension in private and calls it alignment. This cancels manifestation in 3 precise ways. First, it hijacks the reward system. The striatum and prefrontal cortex learn that imagined reward is available on demand. That learning reduces the value of real progress, which is slower and less dramatic. You feel bored by the grind because your brain is comparing raw data to a perfected render that never had to pass a friction test. Second, it warps attention through predictive coding. The brain is a prediction engine. It constantly compares expected input to actual input. If you feed it a constant stream of rich outcomes without matching evidence, the gap grows painful. You will avoid situations that expose the gap. That is how procrastination shields a fragile self-model. You delay to preserve the fantasy. Each day of delay makes the fantasy a little more precious and a little more untouchable. Third, it exploits social validation. Talking about the future recruits the same circuitry that celebrates identity. When you narrate your plan, you get immediate recognition. That recognition reduces your willingness to endure the private losses required to make the plan real. You become a broadcaster of potential instead of a builder of proof. The market does not pay for broadcasts. It pays for proof. This is why people who constantly announce their goals stall. It is not a curse. It is economics. You are spending motivation in public and leaving yourself with nothing to invest in private. Machiavelli wrote that men judge by outcomes. He was not being cruel. He was protecting judgment from theater. You can love the idea of yourself for years and still fail every measurable test in front of you. That is not bad luck. That is cause and effect. There is also a neurological cost that no one warns you about. Repeated outcome visualization without action can depress baseline dopamine. Not acutely for a day. Chronically, the system adapts. It shrinks response to imagined reward. It shrinks response to effort. The world feels flat. You call it burnout or low mood. You blame circumstances. What you did was train your brain to expect payoff with no cost. Then reality offended that training and your system refused the terms. You want a historical precedent. Look at people who built anything that outlasted them. They did not fantasize about the ceremony. They studied constraints. Napoleon obsessed over terrain and supply. He mapped obstacles before he moved an army. He did not sit and feel deserving of victory. Edison held a target, but his notes show long lists of failed trials and incremental adjustments. He could picture a working bulb, but he did not live there. He lived in the circuit and the material and the error rate. That is what your influencers clip out because it does not trend. There is a moral cost too. When you keep simulating a generous future self, you treat present people as if you already paid your debt. You promise. You talk big. You act like gratitude and abundance are in the room. Meanwhile, you avoid the phone call, ignore the invoice, and postpone the hard task you know has to happen. Seneca would call that self-deceit. It is not fake it till you make it. It is fake it till you forget you are faking. Let us get more exact. 2 people have the same target. One creates a hyper-detailed vision board. They script mornings in an ideal apartment, the car sound, the partner's face, the account balance. They visit that image every day. The other person writes the target in a plain sentence and then sits with what is in the way, not as a pep talk, as an inventory. They notice the skills they lack and the habits that cost them. They experience the boredom of repetition ahead of time, so it does not surprise them later. When you meet them both in a year, the first has stronger fantasies and weak evidence. The second has small proof and a colder mind. The second looks less excited and more dangerous. That person is closer. Nietzsche said, become who you are. Not imagine who you are. Become implies friction. It implies loss. It implies that parts of you will die to make room. Manifestation culture edits that out because it is hard to sell. Algorithms prefer dopamine. Courses prefer harmony. Your nervous system prefers comfort. Between those preferences, your life gets negotiated away by people who do not know your name. There is another angle you may not want to hear. Broadcasting your dream makes you easy to target. Marketers listen for people who want to feel like they are moving. They design products that mimic movement. You buy into identity. You get the hoodie, the journal, the retreat, the affirmation track. Each item gives you a hit that fades right on schedule. This is not an accident. It is a market cycle. You are the asset. Your attention is the commodity. Once you understand that, you will stop giving away your hunger for free. A sober vision is not a movie. It is a boundary. It tells you what to say no to. It removes options. It narrows your field until only a few actions make sense. That is the part that feels heavy. It should. Freedom without direction is noise. You are not short of possibility. You are short of constraints you respect. The right constraint is not negative. It is the shape you pour yourself into, so you stop leaking. You may ask if visualization ever helps. Yes, when it serves contact with reality. Visualizing a rehearsal of a skill can prime circuits to fire more efficiently. That is why it shows up in high performance. But even then, it is cold. It is not indulgent. It is boring to watch. If your visualization is entertaining, it is probably harmful. If it is quiet and a little unpleasant, it might be useful. That distinction separates entertainment from engineering. People confuse hope with method. Hope is necessary. It lights the first step, then it must harden into structure. Otherwise, it turns into long-term anesthesia. Kahneman's work on effective forecasting shows how bad we are at predicting how we will feel when we get what we want. We assign too much weight to the achievement and too little to adaptation. Hedonic adaptation resets the baseline. You will not feel ecstatic for long. If you build your life around that feeling, you will chase forever. If you build around process and proof, you will own something no mood swing can dissolve. There is a quiet form of courage that rarely gets applause. It looks like withholding the pleasure of fantasy so you can stay hungry. It looks like refusing to get credit for plans and only accepting credit for results. It looks like skepticism toward your own narratives, especially the flattering ones. It looks like privacy, not secrecy for drama, privacy for focus. When you carry that, you become harder to read and harder to move. That is useful in a world that trades on pulling your strings. Some of you will hear this and feel a drop in the stomach. That is good. It means you recognize the pattern in your own habits. You see the hours you spent inside scripted futures instead of inside measurable work. Do not label it as shame. Label it as tuition. You already paid. Take the lesson. What you do next decides if the cost was worth it. A final layer. Predictive processing means your brain is always compressing complexity into models. When your model of yourself gets too clean and too heroic, you involuntarily filter out signals that counter it. That is how smart people become blind. They do not lack data. They discard data that threatens their identity. If you commit to grand visions with no tolerance for disproof, you will avoid environments that test you. You will curate inputs until you live in a small, safe world that approves of your potential. That is how potential becomes a prison. The correction is philosophical. It is not an app and not a mantra. Tie your sense of self to what you can control. Tie your respect for yourself to decisions under pressure. Tie your faith to evidence. Interpret feelings as weather. Useful to note, foolish to worship. Hold your direction in one hand and your obstacles in the other. That grip keeps you honest. It also keeps you dangerous. You will be tempted to soften this because it is unfriendly to the culture around you. Do not. Culture has a goal. It wants your eyes and your emotion. The longer you stay in a dream, the more valuable you are to someone else. The sooner you exit, the more valuable you become to yourself. That is the trade. If you still want to visualize, Understand the cost of indulgence. Understand what your brain is doing with that scene. Understand how public talk converts hunger into applause. Then decide if the transaction is worth it. If your future matters, stop feeding on it. Make it expensive, let it starve you a little. That pressure will not kill you. It will refine you. What I am saying is not for everyone. It does not flatter you. It gives you no instant high. It asks you to trade comfort now for power later. Most people will not do that. They will protect their rituals. They will say that negativity blocks abundance. They will post a quote, take a walk, and drift back into pleasant images. That is their right. If you kept listening, you are not in that group. You understand that attention is capital. You understand that identity needs proof. You understand that a private code is stronger than a public slogan. The next move is quiet. The next move is not cinematic. The next move is a choice that leaves a mark you can point to a year from now. Join the minority that stops canceling its own future. Hold a vision that is light and a standard that is heavy. Guard your drive. Refuse cheap reward. Treat praise as a tax and evidence as income. If you can do that, you will manifest more than images. You will manifest leverage. And you will not need to announce it. You will be it.